Okay, so how exactly do you engineer a massive agricultural miracle right in the middle of a barren desert? Today, we're diving into this explainer to unpack Egypt's new delta. We're talking about a staggeringly ambitious 800 billion pound megaproject that is quite literally reshaping the geographical map. It's completely redefining what's possible in arid environments, and this isn't just about farming. It's really about taking land that has historically just sat there, totally unutilized, and turning it into this beating heart of national development.
So, the core question we're answering today is this. How exactly does a new Delta project transform a totally barren landscape into a thriving economic hub? I mean, think about it. How do you take a vast expanse of sand and engineer it into a fully integrated agricultural and industrial society, one that can actually support millions of people and thousands of businesses?
To get our heads around this, here's our roadmap. We'll start by looking at a new economic hub, then the water challenge. After that, we'll hit food security and agriculture, look at jobs and new generations, and finally, we'll break down the public-private partnership, making it all happen.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, a new economic hub, building an economy from the sand. Now, the sheer ambition of this is just staggering. We are talking about reclaiming 2.2 million fidans. To put that in perspective, that's roughly 2.2 million acres of completely arid desert. And the strategic placement? Absolutely brilliant. They've situated it right near major logistics arteries, places like the Sphinx Airport, dry ports, and the Alexandria Desert Road. So they aren't just out there planting a few seeds in the sand. They're creating a completely integrated society, connecting agriculture, livestock, food processing, and these massive logistics hubs straight to export markets. And as you'll see, the contrast between eras is really stark. I mean, for thousands of years, the old delta just relied on the natural, effortless gravity of the Nile, right? But the new delta? It requires defying nature entirely through some truly massive mechanical engineering. The traditional delta was essentially a gift of geography. The new delta, on the other hand, is a sheer triumph of modern engineering and willpower, totally built on treated water and incredibly complex infrastructure. But here's the really crucial point. This whole thing isn't just about agriculture. It demands a staggering infrastructure backbone to actually stimulate that industrial development. Just look at these numbers. 12,000 kilometers of roads. That's 1.6 times the width of the entire African continent. Then you have an electrical network of 19,000 kilometers, which is basically a round trip from Cairo to New York. And the piping networks? Literally 8 times the length of the Panama Canal. This heavy infrastructure is the exact foundation that allows private industries to come in and thrive.
Which brings us to Section 2, the water challenge, defying gravity.
Honestly, the engineering here is phenomenal. Usually, agricultural drainage water just flows unused right into the Mediterranean Sea. But instead of letting that happen, they collect it over a 150-kilometer pathway. Then they run it through advanced tertiary treatment facilities. And here is where it gets crazy. By recycling this water and pushing it uphill through a complex series of over 13 massive pumping stations, they are literally engineering a way to make water flow against the laws of gravity. They are pushing nearly 10 million cubic meters of water every single day to areas that have historically never seen a single drop.
To really put this hydraulic achievement into perspective, they've actually excavated, lined, and engineered a massive artificial river system. It spans nearly 300 kilometers just to deliver life to the desert. This artificial river is the absolute lifeblood of the entire 2.2 million Fedon project. It establishes an entirely new critical water artery for the nation.
Okay, moving on to Section 3, food security and agriculture. Feeding 110 million.
Now, maintaining a very realistic perspective, the government openly acknowledges that absolute 100% self-reliance is basically impossible for a population of this size. But strategic planning, that is absolutely vital. You can't magically grow everything a country needs when you're faced with strict land and water limits. But what you can do is be incredibly smart about what you grow and exactly where you grow it to really minimize that import reliance.
So the whole strategy really comes down to this giant nationwide optimization puzzle. Take crops like sugar beets. By moving them out to the new desert lands where, surprisingly, they actually thrive and yield way better results, they free up the old, super fertile clay delta. And why? To maximize domestic wheat production. It's all about putting the right crop in the exact right soil to ensure maximum yield across the board. Of course, making all of this work requires what's called a security triangle. It's basically this highly coordinated effort across multiple ministries to seamlessly connect the water supply, the agricultural planning, and the food storage. So the Ministry of Irrigation secures the water. Then agriculture steps in to manage the complex soil research and crop rotation. Finally, supply swoops in to secure the harvest, managing these newly built silos that hold millions of tons of strategic reserves like wheat and oil.
Let's transition to Section 4, Jobs and New Generations, a ripple effect.
And the result of all this? A massive socioeconomic victory. The expansion of the agricultural sector has actually been a primary driver in dropping the national unemployment rate down to an impressive 6%. Just this sector alone generated 1.3 million new jobs. It really proves that agriculture isn't just some traditional pastime anymore. It is a leading, incredibly dynamic sector in the country's modern economy.
But we're looking way beyond just temporary construction gigs for digging canals here. This mega project provides stable, year-round livelihoods, over 2 million of them, in fact. And the direct benefits for future farmers are just profound. By building out these comprehensive communities, complete with schools, healthcare, and industrial zones, the project actively encourages young families to permanently settle in these newly green regions. It's completely changing the demographic map.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5. The public-private partnership, the economic engine.
So this economic engine runs on a really fascinating hybrid model. Rather than acting as a big monopoly, the government builds out the heavy infrastructure. They cut through the red tape to create an ease of doing business and essentially act as a supportive umbrella for over 1,000 private companies. Right now, as we speak, more than 150 private firms are actually out there farming the land. And incredibly, when global crises hit, the state actually steps in to support struggling businesses, rather than enforcing aggressive financial haircuts. They're acting as an engine of growth, not a conqueror of the market. Now, the ultimate goal of all this is what they call the exit scenario. Basically, the government plans to eventually sell off its shares, whether partially or fully. By stepping back once the heavy foundation is laid, they can take that initial capital and reinvest it into brand new areas of development. They are fully trusting the private sector to take the wheel, inject fresh capital through the stock market, and really sustain the project's legacy for the long haul.
So, as this massive desert oasis continues to bloom, we have to ask ourselves, how seamlessly will the state transition power over to the private sector to ensure this 800 billion pound miracle lasts for generations to come? Will this bold blend of heavy state infrastructure and dynamic private farming become the ultimate global blueprint for conquering the desert? Well, thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will leave you to ponder that thought.